So, on my birthday, my son threw an envelope at me like I was a stranger, I said quietly, picking up the crumpled cash. My name is Isabella Carter, 42, and birthdays used to be quiet reminders of everything I'd sacrificed for people who forgot to appreciate me. The envelope hit the table, sliding across the polished wood, the way he always tried to push me away without saying it outright. Consider this your last gift. From now on, you take care of yourself, he shouted, chest puffed like he'd won some invisible battle. I let him think he'd won. I smiled, calm, steady. No words. No pleading. The kind of restraint that comes from years of being overlooked. I picked up the envelope, letting the bills fall neatly into my hand, and then reached for the blue folder tucked under my chair. Inside were months of research, notes, and confidential contracts. Everything he didn't know I'd been quietly gathering while he imagined I was broken and submissive. He didn't see the pause in my eyes, the weight of what I held. I said nothing, just let the silence stretch between us like a rope. I had learned early that appearances were powerful. Letting them underestimate you gave you leverage. He stomped out, leaving the room vibrating with anger and pride. But pride can be brittle, and I had learned to work with what breaks under pressure. The envelope wasn't just cash. It was permission. Permission to move forward, to reclaim what had always been mine but hidden behind years of neglect and misunderstanding. I set the money aside, opened the blue folder, and began. Step 1. Establish my presence where he never expected. Step 2. Make every move deliberate, quiet, and devastatingly effective. Birthdays were supposed to be about celebration, but this one marked the beginning of my own reckoning. The first domino was about to fall. He returned an hour later, still fuming, expecting me to be crying or packing or begging, because that's the role he'd rewritten for me over the years. But I didn't even look up. I was still seated at the table, the blue folder open like a calm storm waiting to be read. "Why are you still here?" he snapped. "Didn't you get the message?" I closed the folder gently, like the ending of a chapter only I understood. "Micah," I said softly, his name grounding the moment. His face froze. I rarely used his name during tense conversations. "Do you know what this folder is?" He rolled his eyes. "Another one of your emotional files?" "Mom, I don't have time for this." I slid the folder across the table toward him. "Open it." His irritation turned into something else, a flicker of curiosity mixing with unease. He flipped it open, expecting nonsense. Instead, he found documents with official seals, financial statements, property evaluations, email transcripts, and signatures, his father's, his aunt's, and his own, scattered in places he didn't expect. What is this?" he muttered. "Everything," I replied calmly. "Everything you've taken for granted. Everything you assumed I didn't know." He blinked rapidly, reading faster. "Why do you have all this?" "You told me to take care of myself," I said. I listened. His hand shook slightly as he reached the last page. My signed decision to transfer a dormant inheritance fund, sealed years ago by my late mother, fully under my control, and fully inaccessible to him now. "Mom, wait, what is this supposed to mean?" he asked, voice suddenly thin. I stood, smoothing my shirt. "It means the game changed today, Micah. And you don't know the rules anymore." He swallowed hard, sensing, for the first time, that the power had shifted. The twist had only begun. "You said." Micah's face went pale, the anger in his eyes flickering into disbelief. He looked at me like I'd become a stranger overnight. The envelope on my birthday had been just a beginning, a test of his assumptions about me. And he had failed spectacularly. You can't do this," he stammered, voice cracking. "This money, it's mine." I shook my head slowly. "No, it's mine. And so are the choices that come with it." My tone was soft, but every word landed like a hammer strike. For 15 years, he had treated me as disposable, as someone beneath his attention. But today the invisible thread that tied me to his control snapped. He grabbed the folder, flipping pages as if their mere touch could reverse the truth. Bank statements, property deeds, contracts, everything meticulously organized. My blue folder was more than paper. It was years of quiet planning, patience, and foresight. While he wasted time flexing imagined authority, I had built armor no tantrum could penetrate. You were planning this all along?" he hissed. "I was planning my life," I corrected. "Not yours." His hands trembled, and I saw that familiar arrogance crumble. He had imagined he controlled the narrative, but he never anticipated that I could act without seeking his approval. That I could walk away from him and still emerge unscathed, even stronger. I stepped back, letting the folder rest on the table between us, a silent monument to what he'd ignored for years. You handed me your last gift, Micah, I said softly, and I accepted. But I didn't just take it, I turned it into freedom. His eyes darted around, searching for loopholes, excuses, or some hidden advantage. But there was none. Today, I wasn't just taking control of money. I was taking control of my story, my legacy, and my peace. And for the first time, he understood that being underestimated had been my greatest strength all along. The room felt quiet, the tension thick. The game had changed and I was finally in charge. Micah's disbelief hung in the air like smoke, heavy and sharp. I could see him trying to piece together how I had done it all without his notice. 15 years of him thinking I was naive, compliant, and weak, gone in one carefully executed plan. You think you've won? He spat, but there was a tremor in his voice. I smiled, calm, unshaken. I've only started, I said. Winning isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming what was always mine, respect, autonomy, and peace. I could see his jaw tighten. That rigid posture, the one that always screamed superiority, now looked brittle. I opened the folder wider, showing projections for my new venture. My own company, my own rules, built from the foundation he'd thought he owned. Everything he had ignored, every idea he dismissed, every late night he mocked me for, it was all here, documented, alive and thriving. You really thought I'd stay small? I asked softly. That I'd let your insults and dismissals define me? His hands clenched, and I felt a strange satisfaction in the sight of him realizing the truth. I was never small. I had only been waiting. Waiting for the right moment, the right leverage, the right clarity. And now I had it all. He moved closer like he could somehow snatch back control, but I didn't flinch. I held my ground. You wanted me dependent, invisible, weak. You failed. And now you'll watch me build something real, something untouchable. Micah's lips parted, but no words came. His arrogance, which had fueled his sense of power, had evaporated under the weight of reality. For the first time I saw fear. Not a violent fear, but the quiet, heavy fear of someone who has lost all authority over a person they thought they controlled. I closed the folder gently, leaving it between us. My hands rested on it, not possessively, but as a declaration. I wasn't just taking what was mine, I was claiming my life. And in that room, filled with echoes of past neglect, a new chapter began, mine alone. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was filled with the sound of strength finally recognized, of a woman no longer underestimated. The office smelled faintly of burnt coffee and old paper, but it didn't bother me. Not today. Today it was mine. I had spent months quietly preparing, researching every loophole, every regulation, every business strategy Micah had ignored while assuming I'd stay small. And now, standing here, the reality was almost surreal. I flipped the light switch. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the blinds. The walls that had once been his sanctuary were now my canvas. My own vision. My own rules. I ran my fingers along the mahogany desk. His favorite, the one he bragged about as if it made him untouchable. It didn't. Not anymore. Outside, I could hear the city hum, unaware of the subtle revolution unfolding in this room. Every email drafted, every call scheduled, every plan executed in secrecy had led to this moment. Micah's empire had been my inspiration, but not my limit. I was building something stronger, fairer, and unstoppable. I sat down, opening the ledger. Figures aligned, forecasts precise. This wasn't just revenge, it was mastery over my own life. Each number told a story of diligence, foresight, and resilience. I'd taken what was dismissed, neglected, and underestimated, and transformed it into undeniable power. A knock at the door startled me. My assistant peeked in, her eyes wide. "Everything's ready, Ms. Hayes? The contracts, the press release, everything." I nodded, a small smile curling at my lips. "Perfect. Let's show them how it's done." She left quietly and I leaned back, letting the moment sink in. Not triumph, not gloating, just clarity. For years, I had been patient, observing, learning, waiting for the perfect moment to step out of the shadows. Now the shadows were behind me and the light ahead wasn't blinding, it was guiding. I picked up the phone, dialing a number I hadn't used in months. When he answered, I didn't say a word. The silence carried everything he needed to know. My life wasn't his to define. It never had been. Today I reclaimed it. And nothing, not anger, not betrayal, not fear could take that away. The press conference was set for noon. The room buzzed with reporters, cameras, microphones, all pointed at the legacy Micah had built, unaware that today, it would belong to someone else. I arrived early, my briefcase in hand, my posture calm, deliberate. Inside, I wasn't just Amber Hayes. I was a force, a reckoning quietly engineered over years of being underestimated. As I stepped up to the podium, flashes went off. Questions started flying, but I silenced them with a single gesture. "Good afternoon," I began, voice steady. "Today marks a new chapter for the company you all know, and for the people who make it what it truly is." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. Murmurs spread across the room, a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Behind me, the screen lit up with charts, plans, and initiatives I had quietly developed. Programs for employees, for sustainability, for innovation. Every number, every detail meticulously documented. Micah had built the skeleton. I was breathing life into it, giving it purpose and heart. A reporter raised a hand. "Ms. Hayes, are you saying the former CEO's leadership is over?" I smiled faintly. Leadership is not about titles. It's about vision, responsibility, and integrity. Today I step into that responsibility, not to erase the past, but to ensure the future is built on truth and fairness. Phones clicked, pens scratched. Every word was deliberate, every glance a statement. I felt the old sting of being overlooked, but it no longer defined me. I was here, fully seen, fully in control. Later, as I walked out of the building, employees approached, shaking hands, offering smiles of genuine respect. I nodded, accepting it silently. No gloating, no vindication. It wasn't needed. The quiet shift in perception was more powerful than any confrontation. I looked back at the office, now humming with activity, and whispered to myself, "This is mine. All mine." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Evening came, soft and amber, spilling across the city streets as I stepped into my apartment. The day had been a careful orchestration of every move, every pause, every glance meant to claim what was rightfully mine. I set my briefcase down and ran a hand through my hair, feeling the tension of years unwind in the quiet of my own space. For the first time, the world outside didn't feel like a threat. It was a canvas. A knock at the door startled me. It was not a visitor I expected, but a former employee of the family business, someone Micah had ignored, someone I had quietly guided to this very moment. Their eyes held gratitude and awe, but also the same spark I had once held when starting from nothing. "Amber, we didn't think it was possible," they whispered. I smiled. "It is. You just have to believe it is." We talked long into the night, plans spilling onto the table, ideas for expansion, innovation, and fairness that Micah had never considered. This was more than revenge, it was creation. Every setback I had endured, every slight and dismissal, had been the foundation of something greater. Each obstacle had sharpened me, prepared me for this. Later, alone, I opened the window and watched the city lights flicker like stars fallen to earth. The hum of traffic was a lullaby, a rhythm that reminded me of the life I had rebuilt. No longer a bystander, no longer invisible. I allowed myself a quiet smile, thinking of the people who had doubted me, laughed at me, and overlooked me. They were still in their world, bound by their own small perspectives, while I moved forward, unbound and unstoppable. The envelope, the dismissal, the sidelines, they were all behind me. What mattered now was the power to create, to lead, to be seen, not through manipulation or chaos, but through competence, patience, and quiet precision. I sank into the chair by the window, letting the warmth of accomplishment settle over me. For the first time, I felt complete. Tomorrow the world would see the full measure of Amber Hayes. Tonight, I savored the silence of victory. "You said." Morning came like a revelation, crisp and golden. I stepped onto the balcony, the city stretching below, buzzing but somehow smaller now. My phone remained silent and I let it be. Apologies, explanations, and regrets could wait. They were irrelevant. I had moved past the need for their recognition. What I had built, what I had reclaimed, existed outside their grasp. The blue folder from my son rested on the table beside my coffee. I opened it carefully, revealing the documents, transfers, accounts, and confirmations. Every detail executed flawlessly, every precaution taken to ensure nothing could be reversed. My son would never have to question my intentions again. He would see clarity, responsibility, and foresight. A small, private victory that spoke louder than words ever could. Later that day, I received an unexpected call, not from family, not from adversaries, but from someone who had once doubted me, a peer who had watched silently as I transformed